Hi, I'm Jamie Strassman. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Management at the Darla Moore School of Business. My research focuses on gender and workplace relationships with a primary focus on women's professional relationships with one another. There are probably two pretty strong reasons why I decided to focus on women's relationships with one another in particular. One I would say is more personal, the other is more academic. On the personal side, I've had the same group of best girlfriends since I was about 5, and they continue to be one of, if not the most important parts of me. And so I think when I started grad school, it made sense that as I started reading about all sorts of things that occur in the workplace, I naturally gravitated towards the work that had already been done on women's professional relationships. Then in terms of kind of the academic motivation, as I started reading more about women's relationships with one another at work, I came across this discrepancy. So on the one hand, there's this long-standing body of work that non-academics are familiar with as well called the Queen Bee literature. And that literature really found, or its core finding, is that in many cases, women, especially those who work in settings with mostly men, are not inclined to form relationships with one another. But then I was also at the same time reading work in what we call the network space. So really looking at kind of how people form relationships with one another more broadly. And what I saw there actually kind of directly opposed the Queen Bee literature. So said, no, in contexts where there are mostly men, women are actually more prone to forming relationships with one another. And so I looked at that and kind of just thought to myself, well, let's solve this. What's going on? There has to be some way to reconcile these two opposing bodies of work. Probably the most consistent thing that I found, at least in my experimental work, is that when women are feeling a gender threat, which is pretty much the idea that in my place of work, I'm not respected, or I fear that I'm not respected because I'm a woman, or I don't belong, I stick out, I don't fit in because I'm a woman, they predominantly choose to connect with other women, but in private. So in settings, through mediums in which they actually cannot be observed by other people. And to me, this is fascinating because while I couldn't tell you exactly what this means in terms of, well, does this mean that women, because of this very fact, are not getting promoted as often? I don't think we know that yet. But what it does mean is that we've been focusing for a really long time on how men and women's networks, how their types of relationships differ. What this finding suggests is what we've been missing is that actually the way they go about communicating and building those networks, so what communication channels they actually use, are also fundamentally different. And so I think that could have a multitude of pretty significant impacts on women's career trajectories and relationships at work that we just don't even know yet. To me, this research matters because workplace relationships matter. We spend so much time at work. So yes, workplace relationships matter because it's how you get information at work. It's potentially paths to promotion, sponsorship, mentorship. All those things are really important for someone's career outcomes. But again, because we spend so much time at work, workplace relationships matter for our well-being, for our quality of life. The better our workplace relationships are, the closer they are, the more comfortable they are, the more high quality they are, the happier we are. So some of the next major questions I'm pursuing stem from work that I've already done. So I mentioned that one of the most consistent things I found is women's tendency when they're feeling a threat that's caused by their gender identity. When they're feeling that sort of threat, they connect with other women in private. I would love to know more about the consequences of that. So is that actually lessening their visibility in the workplace in a way that's detrimental to career outcomes? Is that actually beneficial for whatever reason? So I would love to know more about that, how actually the communication channels, more broadly, the communication channels in which we use at work, how that actually affects our workplace outcomes. On a related note, I would also love to know how women's relationships and groups of women are actually perceived at work. So one of the reasons why women are connecting with other women in private is so as to not increase kind of the obviousness of their gender, so that they're not lumped in as this girl's girl. And what I want to know is there kind of validity behind that fear? So when we look at a group of women at work, are we thinking differently about those women than maybe if we saw them interacting with men, or maybe if we saw men interacting with each other? The thing that has probably been the most meaningful about my work is not necessarily one specific finding, but just how much it seems to connect with the women I talk to who are actually boots on the ground doing the real work. I don't think there's been a time that I've mentioned my research to another woman in the workplace who hasn't at least connected with some aspect or been interested in some sort of question that I'm asking. And at the end of the day, that is the whole goal and mission of research, is to do something that actually matters to the people in the context that you're studying. And so that has been particularly meaningful.